Since the 1950s, many people in various parts of the world have been discovering a very strange white substance, apparently being emitted from UFOs, and it's called angel hair. Join me with my guest on this week's Let's Talk Paranormal. Next. My special studio guest today, Brian Boldman, is a licensed pilot and aircraft mechanic. He had his very first UFO sighting in 1989 and ever since has spent over a decade trying to research and investigate UFOs and its connection to this very mysterious substance called angel hair. And Brian joins me in the studio today from North Carolina. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, Tracy.
It's great to see you.
It's great to be back.
Good. You know what? This angel hair substance, for viewers watching the show today, you know what they're going to say. Is it to do with angel hair? Is it really hair of angels? Or is it something to do with pasta and it's not?
Absolutely not. This sort of substance you wouldn't want to ingest. As a matter of fact, in some cases it's been radioactive, so
Really?
I certainly wouldn't want to eat it.
What are the characteristics of angel hair?
It's generally snow white, fibrous. It superficially resembles spider web.
Right.
And for forever, even serious ufologists and researchers have written off angel hair cases as nothing but ballooning spider web. They use spiders use silk to migrate on convective air currents, and so for years and years, that's been the explanation for it.
Now, how did you get involved with it, though?
Well,
apart from your sighting in 89?
In 89, right, and I got kind of just frankly bored by reports of nocturnal lights in the sky, you know, anecdotal reports, and there's nothing you can really do with them. I wanted physical evidence, tangible evidence.
Okay.
Actually, angel hair is a CE2, close encounter of the second kind.
Okay,
it's
close
a trace,
encounter of the second kind.
It's a trace left by a UFO.
Okay. We're going to have a look at a picture as you're talking a little bit more about
certainly.
that, Brian. So it's a
CE2, close encounter of the second kind.
Okay.
And it is tangible evidence. Here, this is an interesting fall. This happened in Horseheads, New York in 1954.
Okay.
And it was actually radioactive. There was some conjecture that it had drifted over from the nuclear test out in Nevada, but to wind up in New York and in February, it was kind of odd to be that far away. And also, the fact that it fell in February is not indicative of ballooning spiders and migrating spiders, because they don't migrate in February. That's winter in New York.
Just getting back to that picture that we just saw, Brian.
Sure.
How did that gentleman discover that angel hair?
He was actually a chemistry professor at Elmira College in New York, and was called in to investigate that. And they had a Geiger counter that picked it up as radioactive. And that's not the only case. We've had cases where it's had a tritium H3, which is man-made. It's made in nuclear reactors, which is very odd for spider web. You can imagine the spiders that will produce that.
Right.
And also, the other property of angel hair, which is indicative of it not being spider web, is the fact that it sublimates. It actually changes state from a solid to a gas, like dry ice would.
Right.
It doesn't, as an ice cube would, it goes from a solid to a liquid to a gas. Angel hair has been known to vanish upon handling. I guess the latent heat of a hand would make it just simply disappear. Temperature may do it.
Yeah.
And it typically falls on clear days where there's a low humidity, and that may have a bearing on how this stuff is produced by our little friends. What I did is I did a study of angel hair. I went to the Library of Congress, different archives, and found all the articles, all the data I could find on angel hair from 1947 to 2000.
Right.
And then I did an analysis of the data. And what I found in 215 cases during that time period, that in 57% of the time, UFOs are involved with the fall of this material.
Really?
Absolutely. And in 40% of the cases, the material sublimates to nothing, to a gas.
Let's have a look at a close-up of the angel hair. Because we saw in the first slide the gentleman holding that. Let's take a look at that close-up. There we are.
Right. This substance fell in Vercelli, Italy on November 8th, 1999. And it's interesting because we have another case coming up a little bit later on, I believe, where it was collected by Tom Brewer off of I-5 around Sacramento. Well, that actually fell 3 days after the Vercelli fall in Italy over here in California on the 11th.
Really?
3 days afterward.
Wow.
And that sample we have now had analyzed,
Okay.
which we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Right. And we have an even closer image of the angel hair, so we'll take a look at that. There we go, look.
Right. I think this is also the Vercelli substance. It's a 60x microphotograph, and we've done comparisons with spiderweb, and the fibrils in this angel hair are much finer. The denier is much thinner than spiderweb, and it doesn't contain the glue drops that spiderweb would have on it.
Yeah, because you know, if you really look at a spider's web, it is very strong, but there's no way it looks that white and thick. There's
That's
no way.
correct. That's correct. It superficially does, and that's what's thrown people off for forever that have researched it. But the devil's in the details. You have to really look at all the data. The fact is that spiderweb is a polypeptide protein, and a strand the same diameter as steel, well, the spiderweb is 5 times as strong.
Polypeptide
Protein.
What does that mean, Brian?
Well, it's a organic substance that spiderweb is made. It's produced by the spiders with different glands and different proteins come together to form the web and the spinneret. But now angel hair, on the other hand, it superficially looks like it, but when you look at the data and you look at the fact that in 40% of these cases, people unknown to each other, separated both by geography and time, have reported the same properties, UFOs overhead and
it's all over the world. This
all over
is
the world except for
a
Antarctica.
wide phenomena.
It is. It absolutely
Except
is.
for, didn't catch that last
I
bit.
think Antarctica. I don't know.
Antarctica.
That's probably just a population density situation there.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at the next slide. This goes back BC.
The earliest case I have, of course, you know, when you go back this far, it's kind of hard to pin it down exactly as to all the information. You don't have any current witnesses. But the earliest case was, I think, a 50 BC in the Council of Marseille.
Right.
It was reported there and recorded by historians of the time.
Okay. Well, we'll go into that a little bit further when we pull up the other slides, Brian. As we saw in that slide there, we saw a craft traveling across the sky, and there was a trail left behind it.
Absolutely.
Now, are there certain UFO types that emit this?
Absolutely. During the day, it's mainly a daytime phenomenon, actually afternoon. And what's mostly associated with it are the cigars and the disc.
Yeah, because I did some research into your research, and basically you were suggesting that discs and saucer-shaped crafts, 32 cases at 44%.
That's correct.
Globes and sphere-shaped UFOs were 21 cases at 29%. Cigars, 10 cases, 14%, and then other 9 cases, 12%. So the highest there is the discs and saucer-shaped. Why do you think that is?
Well, it could be like a different, if these are our little friends from who knows where, it could be like a Ford and a Chevy. You have different makes of vehicles, and this particular make, particular producer, are the ships that produce this angel hair filament. And I have a suspicion that it has to do with acceleration or propulsion, because there have been several cases now, not just several, but at least several dozen, where the witnesses have reported when the UFO departs the area, the angel hair falls then immediately following that.
Now, is this a daylight thing, Brian?
It's mainly a daylight thing. The peak of the sightings is about 1:30, 1:45 in the afternoon.
Okay. And the weather conditions have to be
clear.
Clear.
And that's why it's mainly a fall. Actually, you get right down to it. I think that the humidity in the atmosphere is what's really important to produce this stuff. Right. And it could very well be that these ships are, when they're in, say, a heavy, like during the summertime when there's a lot of humidity in the atmosphere, they don't produce it for that reason.
Right.
There's many fewer cases in the summertime when it's humid and hot.
Okay. We'll take a look at the next slide of our angel hair and see what we have. There we go. There's the fresco.
That's right.
What do we have here, Brian?
Okay, this is the fellow there you see with the yellow on. He was Pope Laborio, I'm sorry,
okay.
In Rome, and he supposedly had a dream where he had seen a white substance fall from the sky, and he was instructed that this would be a miracle and that they were to construct a basilica on the spot. Lo and behold, the following day, on 354 AD, on a hill in Rome, this substance fell. And they have, since then, they built a basilica on the spot. It's the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. And to commemorate this event, they have what's called the Feast of St. Mary Major, or St. Mary of the Snows, rather, on August 5th every year, where they drop flower petals from the balcony of the basilica. So
they're celebrating this as some kind of sacred thing.
I think so. It goes, well, I think that's, when you get right down to the frescoes, I think that's what it was. They took what would be, to our mind, a UFO type event, a CE2, and turned it into a religious type of an event.
Okay, and we'll take a look at the next one. We probably have another fresco here. There we go.
Okay, this depicts the miracle of the snow. That was, I don't know the painter there, but these were done about the 15th century to commemorate the miracle that had happened, and where the basilica was built on that spot. So the basilica was actually built right after the frescoes were done, but where the substance fell on the hill in Rome is where the basilica was actually built.
Wow, that's quite interesting stuff. I just want to mention, Brian, in some of your research, you actually wrote about angel hair fall times. And you'd put local fall start 6 a.m. to 12 noon. There were 8 cases.
That's correct.
14%. 12:01, very precise there, to 6 p.m., 37 cases at 65%.
That's correct.
12:01 again to 2 p.m., 14 cases at 25%, and then the average start time was 1:45 p.m. So the fall cases there were the 37 cases at 65% between 12:01 and 6 p.m.
That's correct. It's mainly an afternoon phenomenon. And that is what has led people to jump to the conclusion that it's ballooning spiders.
Right.
Okay, what happens is they pay out their line of silk, they migrate during the day, the morning, and then they alight in the afternoon, and but if you look at the details, and you look at the fact that it sublimates, and you look at the fact that 57% of these cases, from 47 to 2000, involve UFOs, well, we have a problem.
Well, the thing is with ballooning spiders that I can't quite get my head around, Brian, is that wouldn't this ballooning spider have to be native to most countries on the globe? Absolutely,
and it's been blamed here in the U.S. on a species called Linifidae, which, if I'm saying that correctly, I'm not an entomologist, but that one species is not indigenous to a lot of areas where this stuff has fallen. And there's another very important point about this. Spiders also migrate in the spring.
Right.
And we don't have a big spike in the spring. We have no...
Yeah, and October is the month where we get all
and
these...
there again, if you look at October, it's generally a dry month. You know, you have very low humidity when these falls happen. A classic example would be a clear blue sky on a fall day. And a UFO is seen, a silver cigar or globes or disc, followed by their either shooting off or doing maneuvers. They don't have to just be departing the area. They could actually be leapfrogging each other. They do all kinds of reported aerobatics, right angle turns, and then the substance falls from the sky.
Right. Isn't it an anniversary of the first
Whitsett, North Carolina.
sighting today?
That's absolutely correct. Whitsett was 1955, and it's a little town just east of Greensboro, North Carolina, which is the center, kind of the central part of the state. And this is a very interesting case because not only did a whole class see this, they were let out early due to this. They were all out on recess. The principal witnessed it. All the school teachers have, and I've since located 2 of them and spoken with them.
Oh, you have?
One of the children I found, he's an insurance agent still in Greensboro. I've spoken with him. He remembers it. And the principal was named H.D. Lambeth. He was an observer during the Second World War. He had his wings. He flew combat missions over Burma. And he calmly asked the children to bring him a chair. He got his binoculars out of his car, sat down, and watched 8 what he called ball bearings, steel-looking ball bearings, to quote him exactly.
Okay.
These things cavorted around overhead, disappeared over the horizon, and then this stuff just fell all over the schoolyard.
My goodness, that's awesome. Let's take a look at the next slide, Brian, and we'll probably come to that Whitsett case in a few moments. Oh, there's
Sure,
another fresco.
Yeah, this is, and this also has the UFO connection. You can see the fellow with the stick or whatever he's doing. He's scraping a spot on the ground where this stuff is. That shows to me is something tangible.
Right. So this is something actually there.
Yeah, right.
Very
And they
real.
had linked it, or the artist had linked it to UFOs in the fresco.
Okay, and the next slide. We have
Okay.
some kind of a report there, Brian.
Yes, we do. This is a Project Blue Book record card for anyone that's familiar with Project Blue Book, the Air Force's investigation into UFOs. And there, it had said that this case had happened, actually that case had happened in Marysville, Ohio, and also Union City, Indiana. It was spread out over a wide area. And even though the principal had witnessed a UFO, and I think we have a drawing that he did coming up, Project Blue Book blew it off as spider gossamer, or ballooning spiderweb.
Right.
And we have there a UFO that shot off, leaving a trail of angel hair 3 miles.
3 miles?
3 miles. The school teachers reported that.
Goodness. Is it quite stretchy substance?
It is, and as a matter of fact, it seems to be contradictory, but it can be very strong and tough to break, followed by its complete sublimation to nothing.
Right.
Now that's a very strange property.
Right.
It points to me that that's definitely not a spider web type material.
No, I'd say not. I'd say not. And you know what? I have a friend in the UK, as a small boy, found some of this angel hair after a UFO sighting, managed to find a little matchbox, place it inside the matchbox, closed it, hurried off home to show his parents. When he got home, opened the matchbox, totally disappeared.
Classic. That's just a classic example. This is what has been reported time and time again. And again, these witnesses are separated by continents and time, reported 20 years apart. These people don't know each other and they report the same things.
That's right. Very, very strange, isn't it?
It is.
I want to just mention here, Brian, a few head scratchers written in the UFO Reporter, the results of analysis by several different professional people are strangely contradictory.
That's correct.
It is a significant fact that none of the scientists identified the material as the web of a ballooning spider. 6 scientists of the Australian Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Organisation have studied the threads. As the threads have a melting quality, they are further puzzled. A fibre technician with Burlington Industries tested a sample of the angel hair and said it was not cotton, wool, or any commercial synthetic yarn. He suggested that it might be spider webs or a similar animal material, but a Greensboro biologist examined a sample of the angel hair under a microscope and said it was unlikely that it was a spider's web.
Absolutely. We get this time and time again in the data. You have a game of animal, vegetable, or mineral. You have the animal people saying, well, it's got to be a plant material. And the plant people are saying, oh, it's got to be an animal product. So they don't know what to do with it. And
Right.
can you imagine what happens if someone sends them a sample for analysis and when it gets to the lab, there's nothing in the vial? You know, what happened to this?
If anybody, incidentally, finds any of this angel hair, Brian, what would you suggest they do?
Number one, document as much information as you can. If you have a camera, take pictures. I would suggest using a clean, to put it into a airtight container, and this is important, a clean utensil if possible. It's a good idea if you could get something like a drinking straw with a wrapper, collect it with that because we need clean samples that are not contaminated for analysis.
So don't touch it.
Do not touch it.
Any circumstance.
Put it into the cleanest container in the most sanitary way you can do it, and then we can analyze it. And another thing, to stop sublimation, you can either increase the vapor pressure inside the vessel that contains it, or you can cool it. So I would suggest that people get this stuff in a vial, put it, if you can stop at a convenience store, get a bag of ice, and just shove it right in the middle of it.
So
and that will help preserve it.
Okay, so you would give it that kind of temperature?
I would, and ideally we'd want to store it cryogenically, you know, at a very, very low temperature to avoid the sublimation. But it's important if people get a sample in a sealed container and it does sublimate to not open the top or the lid, because that's just going to let the gas out. If they keep the gas in, we can do gas chromatography on it and get an analysis that way.
Right, okay. Let's have a look at the next slide, see what we have. We have another report there.
Okay, this is the one I'd mentioned where the principal over the schoolhouse in Ohio saw the thing shoot off and it left a 3-mile trail. Well, that's the one that Blue Book said was nothing but spider gossamer. But however, the principal drew that sketch in the Blue Book report.
Right, and we'll take a look at the next one.
Okay, this is also the Marysville case. This is a news clipping, and I'm not sure of the exact paper here, but that teachers say flying saucer left up. That report right there, that newspaper clipping, talks about the sublimation. That they thought that they witnessed it as being very strong, tough to break, and then it just sublimated in her hands.
Really?
So we have this property again and again and again.
Are you the only researcher, Brian, doing this?
No, there's a few down in Australia doing it. I know of a few in, there's one in the UK, I think, and there's one in Italy, but none of them have taken, have done the extensive research that I've done on it, as far as I know.
So in most of the cases when people have had the UFO sightings, they have seen a craft and then they've discovered the substance. Has there ever been a situation where a craft hasn't been witnessed and the material's been placed there?
It has. As I mentioned, 57% involve UFO sightings. So, you know, that's
quite a high percentage.
It is a high
isn't it?
percentage, but we do have cases where it's just found on the ground. And I have a feeling there that probably UFOs are actually underreported because most people nowadays don't look at the sky anymore. You know, they
No,
look
they
at their
don't. They
and a
don't.
craft could very well have passed overhead, have discharged it, and they find it on the ground or over their trees, bushes, usually found hanging on branches, limbs, over wires, that sort of thing. And there had been a UFO, so I think the UFOs are probably underreported.
Right. Let's take a look at the next one. There's the Whitsitt
That's the Whitsitt case. The gentleman, the principal is H.D. Lambeth. The child all the way to the left there, pointing to the sky, is the insurance salesman I was mentioning.
Right.
He lives in Greensboro.
So how many people in that case actually got to witness the angel hair?
Well, you had, as I mentioned, the school teachers, the principal, and all the children, at least most of them,
So a class
that
of
I
children
found.
is about, what, 30 children?
It was about 60 of them here that
60?
day. And they were so excited by this, what they had found, that the principal said, oh, well, school's over with. You know, they were just, they wouldn't stop talking about it, they wouldn't settle down, so we just missed school.
Oh, wow.
Another interesting thing about that is he had taken a sample, put it in a piece of construction paper wrapped up inside of his wallet and one locked in a filing cabinet in the school. and only he and one other person had the key to that. Well, both samples vanished, and he doesn't know what happened to them, where they went.
Really?
Now, civil defense was involved, but I'm not going to draw any connections there.
So the actual sample in the paper, the whole thing was gone?
The whole thing, the construction paper, the sample inside the locked filing cabinet vanished as well.
Right.
He doesn't know what happened to it.
Huh. Let's take a look at the next one.
And this again is Exquisite. This is, you had mentioned the Burr Mill lab people not knowing, you know, the animal, vegetable, mineral thing, and this is simply an article that mentioned those facts.
Everybody seems so confused about this angel hair phenomena. They don't know which way to go with it, do they?
Absolutely not.
Which way would you go with it? How would you take this a step further?
Well, actually, we've already done that. We've had samples recovered and returned to us, and we've undergone all kinds of analysis now on it. We've had the gas chromatography done on it. Fourier transform infrared analysis has been done on it. And so we basically know what it is, and it's not spiderweb. We know that for a fact.
It doesn't even look anywhere closely remote to spiderweb. It's too thick. It's too white.
Well, absolutely. And you don't have, for instance, a couple of the chemicals that's been found in it, 2-methyl-1-propene, 2-methyl-1-propane. All kinds of strange things that biologists I've talked to, actually at North Carolina State, say, no, this is not related to flora or fauna. They don't know what it's doing in it.
Wow. Well, I know that Brian would like you folks at home to do some investigations of angel hair by yourselves, and you can actually email Brian if you have any angel hair discoveries. If you'd like to know more information, you can contact Brian. Brian is just getting a website together right now.
That's correct.
But you can check Brian out on my website, Let's Talk Paranormal, and he'll have more information on angel hair there and more slides of angel hair that we perhaps didn't see on the show today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, Brian, but thank you so much for coming along. It's been so educational, and we're going to keep our eyes to the skies, and we're going to see if we can catch some angel hair. So until next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.